So welcome everybody. Thank you for coming this afternoon. I'm just going to start with a little shameless self-promotion for everybody. This is actually my first book. I'm kind of proud of it. It's got a lot of really great EA information in it, and especially I've focused on ERIS, which we're going to talk about a little bit today, and there's much more in this longer forecast, and about Pallas Athena. Who are both big players in what's coming up. Everybody's talking about Saturn and Pluto and Jupiter, the eclipses perhaps, but these two planets are real players, and we need to pay some attention to them. And I think when we get through today's talk, you're going to understand more of where I'm coming from. So thanks again, and let's get started. So the title of the talk is Saturn-Pluto square Eris, and this is an event that has not happened. In the case of Saturn, it's 500 years, and in the case of Eris, it's 2,600 years. And I'm not saying that these planets have never come into a square in that length of time, but the particular square from Capricorn to Aries is quite significant, and it is quite rare, and it's what we are experiencing right now. And as I walk through this, and we look at the astrology and some of the astronomy, and certainly some of the history in the mythology, you're really going to get an idea, a handle on what's happening, not just here in the States, but what's happening around the globe, because we're all feeling the same thing. It's just we're feeling it in our own individual way. So it's a little put together, just as a result of all the work I've been doing with this. From the night, Eris arises, fanning flames of discord and strife. No mercy she incites, spreading her wrath. Nightmares weep out in the wake of her path. Time is contorted, the future shimmers, tentatively, seductively it glimmers. Gaia is pulsing, chiming, commanding our attention. The earth is melting and flooding and burning her way to another dimension. So I'm going to start with the story of the golden apple, because when we talk about Eris, this is what she's known for. She's known as the instigator of the, she's known as the instigator of the, let me get back here. Oh boy. Seem to not be able to go backwards. There we go. So she's laid with the culpability of having started the Trojan War. She was snubbed from the banquet that Zeus held for Metis and Peleus, who were the parents of Achilles. And interestingly enough, I should have added this in this paragraph, she was snubbed by Chiron, who sent out all the invitations. So there we have a role of Chiron that really we haven't seen before, where he was the one who snubbed Eris for this big event. So she showed up anyway, and she tossed a golden apple into the wedding party, and it said on it, "To the fairest one." And it ignited a contest between Hera, Pallas Athena, and Aphrodite. And each of them offered, well, I guess I'm getting ahead, but Paris, who was the son of the king of Troy, was chosen to be the judge. And so each of them offered him some great prize in the world. And it was Aphrodite who promised him the most beautiful in the world. So clearly, that's who he chose. It's, part of human nature. I'll leave it at that. And he offered her Helen, who was the wife of Menelaus, the king of Sparta. And he came and he secretly abducted Helen and took her off to Troy. Now, Helen has her own mythology that really could fill this whole hour. But briefly, there were two sets of twins that were born at the same time, Castor and Pollux, and Helen and Clytemnestra, who was the wife of Agamemnon. And they're two sets of twins, and it has lots of ramifications, based just on that idea itself. But just like Castor and Pollux, Helen was the immortal member of the twins. Clytemnestra was actually part of the Orestes tragedy. Agamemnon murdered her daughter, and Clytemnestra was so incensed that she conspired with Orestes and murdered Clytemnestra. And I'm really getting off track here. But the impact of Helen in the mythology is huge. She was more than just the woman who was abducted, and taken off to Troy and started the Trojan War. However, it would be really reductionist to just leave her as the investigator, because perhaps the chaos that ERIS brings is really working towards some kind of transformation and transcendence. The Trojan War raged on for 10 years, and when it was over, all of the heroes of Greek mythology were dead. It actually marked the end of the Greek classical age. And it's humanity's athema. Beauty was the irresistible attraction, and the myths jest that Helen was not taken against her will, and nor did she ever feel any remorse for her betrayal of Menelaus. And, so in some ways it was Helen, not Eris, who started the Trojan War. She was the face that launched 1,000 ships and burnt the topless towers of Ilium, as Homer wrote in the Iliad. And to stop at this point in the story, it would reduce the effect of who she really was. I'm trying to see that there's a duplication here. But the point is that she, I'm sorry, I'm having this technical stuff here. I don't know why it's just beeping on me. But at any rate, it wasn't just the topless towers of Ilium that were born, so was Hellas. Greece also came to its demise in these days, and it was the end of what we call the Greek classical age. So the golden apple is back. Eris is back, and we're gonna walk you through what's really going up in the sky at the moment. But this is how I categorize all this. We have another golden apple that has been tossed into this party, or into this community that we have here. But this time the apple is not a thing. So if we look back, we look ahead. On January 16th, Saturn in Capricorn is going to form a last quarter square from Capricorn to Aries. For the last time this century. And I'm gonna walk through some of these long transits. This particular transit will not occur again for over 500 years, and it won't happen again. You see the dates here, 2459 to 2519. It's exceptionally rare. Her orbit is 500 years long, and out of that 500 years, she spends 120 years approximately in the single sign of Aries. Aries was her brother. She was also a goddess of war. He was the god of war. They fought alongside. They cheered the Greeks and the Romans on against each other to rage. They were both on the sidelines as the cheerleaders for the war, as was Pallas Athena. And so she's very comfortable in his home. It's a really interesting event. Not only that, but she was discovered in the sign of Aries only in 2005. So her transit of Aries is highly potentiated, and it generates challenging events because of the exceptionally long transit in the sign. Through each 100-year transit of Eris through Aries, Uranus conjoins twice, because Eris, she's in Aries this time for 129 years. So that's two Uranus cycles. And then Saturn also conjoins multiple times. In our century, it's been 3 times in the past 100 years, but in the last conjunction 500 years ago, more remarkably, they hooked up 13 times. Saturn and Eris, because Eris moved so slow, they just kept retrograding back and forth over each other. It's remarkable. And the other thing that's significant about Aries transit is that Eris's transit of Aries is that she is, because she moves so slow and she goes retrograde once a year, she retrogrades at every single point in Aries as she moves through it in that length of time. Every single Aries point is drilled down by retrograde activity. So it's quite a dynamic event. This is the chart of the square. And this is actually the transits to the U.S. chart. I use a different U.S. chart. I use a chart from July 6, 1775. It's another whole discussion. I believe that this was really the founding of our country when Continental Congress actually declared war on Great Britain, on England. Then the United States became a sovereign entity and severed all economic and political ties with another country. And this is a very validating chart. If you look at some of these exact aspects, it just tells me that this is kind of one of the right things to be looking at. So the chart has a 0 Aries rising. Cardinal signs are on all the angles, and this conjunction at 23 degrees. 23 degrees, the square at 22 degrees is in a very tight square to the natal moon in the U.S. chart. Now, the moon is the ruler of the 10th house. The 10th house is the presidency, is the leader, would be the king, or the leader of any country. And it's in the first house. The moon also represents the body politic, the people at large. And the first house also represents the country at large. So we can see this powerful square, both to the leadership and to the population of our country. Interestingly enough, the country is also coming up with a lunar return within a couple of days of this conjunction. Uranus is forming in conjunct to Saturn. Saturn, again, represents the leader or the ruler. And again, here it is in the first house, in the house of the people. And Pluto's down in the fourth house. It's the land, and again, it is the family of our country. So we can really feel what's going on here. Pluto is also in a very tight inconjunct to the south node. It's partile. This is just an amazing chart to see how this lands on this with such accuracy. And with such intensity, and we can really begin to understand what's happening here in the States anyway, in terms of our presidency and in terms of the mood of our country. So for most of the 15th and 16th century, Saturn squared Eris. This was 500 years ago. And here's some of the events that occurred. This square occurred an incredible 13 times. The fall of Constantinople to the Ottoman Empire. I mean, this was huge. This was actually the end of Western control of the Asia Minor. Constantinople was the Rome, if you would, of the world when the Holy Roman Empire was falling apart. Johannes Gutenberg invented the printing press, which seeded the Renaissance. Columbus discovered America. Actually, this was the time of all the New World discoveries by the conquistadors, but it also led to the genocide of the indigenous people of the Americas through warfare and disease. We had the life of Joan of Arc, Martin Luther, Leonardo da Vinci, and Michelangelo all lived in this time period. The Inca Empire was founded in South America, and Guru Nanak, who was the saint to most of the Eastern religions, was born. And it was also the beginning of the slave trade. So we can see in this time period some things of the highest expression of human nature and also some of the worst. So Eris returned to Eris again in 1927 after all that time in Capricorn. So in 1929, we had the stock market crash. It led to the Great Depression, the rise of fascism, ultimately to World War II. In 1959, Saturn and Eris squared again. We had the Cuban Revolution. We had the day the music died. If you remember, Buddy Holly and Big Bopper, and it was a terrible event, for all the rock and roll world. The Dalai Lama was forced out of India. Alaska and Hawaii got statehood, which first two states to come around in 100 years. In cold blood murder occurred in Kansas. Brutal event, the bestseller that publicized it, and just a brutal thing. Very, very Eris-like. The transistor was invented. The transistor is the foundation of modern electronics. We would not be sitting here in this room in Zoom without a transistor, or transistors being available. Sputnik was launched. It was the beginning of the space race. DNA was discovered, basic chromosomal alphabet. CERN is the home of the largest particle accelerator in the world, and again, it's part of the technology that is running our world at the moment. And NASA, where would we be with all the things that NASA has shown us? And again, the third time came around, and we had the breakup of the Soviet Union, and the reunification of Germany. DNA became the Human Genome Project. Not only was DNA discovered, but it was mapped. And NASA now had a space telescope that they could see out far into the universe, farther beyond anything we'd ever seen. This time period also marked the launch of the Voyager missions, which has given us the amazing photographs and imagery from our outer planets and beyond that have just never been available to us. And needless to say, the World Wide Web, I mean, that is not much that I can add. We all know what that means. So on January 26, 2020, an even rarer event is going to occur. Something that hasn't happened in 2,700 years from Capricorn to Aries. Pluto will perfect the first of 3 last quarter squares to Eris in 2020 and in 2021. This last happened in 691 BC. It was the last exact square, and it occurred 7 times in that time frame. And it's the only single instance of this particular event that I can find for the last 3,000 or 4,000 years, which as far as solar fire will go back. This is from the Upanishads. The Upanishads were written during this period. This was the axial age. Everybody who has read Psychos and Cosmos and Psyche, knows how Rick Tarnas has illuminated what has happened in those years astrologically. Well, this is refers back to that time when Buddha emerged in India, and Zoroaster emerged in Persia. Confucius in China, Pythagoras, Hesiod writes Theogony, which is one of the basic texts of Greek mythology. And the Chinese invented printing, which I think is really interesting because it was then, history doesn't repeat, it rhymes. And then Gutenberg, in another transit, actually invented the printing press. And the sacred Hindu texts of the Upanishads were written, and the Mesopotamian power transferred from Assyria to Babylonia with the fall of Nineveh. Again, that was a huge shift and reorganization of power. So this is the chart for the event December 10th. Actually, I thought I had a different chart here. Yeah, let's work with this one because this is the first square that's on January 26th. And again, you can see how this tightly impacts the U.S. chart. Clearly it's only a week or so later than the Saturn square, but it's a double down. We're getting a 1-2 punch here from Saturn and then Pluto to Eris. But the impact, it's almost as if I kind of categorize it 2,700 years and 500 years. Think of the potentialized energy that has been built up over that time. Think about how hungry you would be if you hadn't eaten for 500 years. It's an amazing release of energy that is potentiated here. And it's been seeping out clearly because Eris moves so slowly. It's not like this event's going to happen on that day. It's been happening really since the Uranus-Pluto squares and the Uranus-Eris conjunction back in 2015 and 2016. So this is again, it's actually almost the third, the third shoe was falling. We had Pluto enter Capricorn and all the Capricornian energy. Then we had Uranus square Pluto. Then we had Uranus conjunct Eris, and now we have Pluto and Saturn squaring Eris. This cycle is unfolding with tremendous impact. But this chart again is quite interesting because here we have Eris, in a tight trine to Venus, and also squaring Pluto again in the U.S. chart. And so, our values, our priorities, and what's really, important to us are really on the line here, really being pressured. Venus is conjunct the North Node in the U.S. chart, so there's no, this is not a lightweight matter at all. And we haven't even, considered the fact that we're looking at nearly a Pluto return here that's only 2 degrees apart. From my perspective, the Pluto return is already happening, and the Neptune opposition is already happening. They're coming into orb. And the Neptune opposition is humongous because we're seeing these radical tensions and conflicts, religious and philosophical, and our country is polarized in a way that we have not seen since the Civil War or the American Revolution. And both of these events, actually, many of these events actually refer back to that time astrologically and historically. So, history doesn't repeat, it rhymes. So let's see if I can go back here. The other thing that I want to bring up is that Pallas is also quite active. And if anybody has listened to the last, one of the last Zoom talks I did, I spent a lot of time talking about Pallas. But you see that she's down here. She's also in Capricorn at the time of this conjunction. She hasn't quite met up with Jupiter, Pluto, or Saturn, but she's already, applying to the South Node, and she is going to, by transit, conjunct Jupiter, and then Pluto, and then Saturn, and then she's going to retrograde back over them. So she is going to pick up information from all of them that they have, as each of these outer planets come together, there's an energy, a frequency, an energetic exchange that occurs between them. And it builds. It's almost as if they're building, the image that I just got is like one of these rubber band balls that's built out of 1,000 rubber bands. It's cobbled together. It starts to build itself into some construct, some structure. And then Pallas is coming along, and she's the informer. She's the octave transformer from the higher mind to the lower mind, from Uranus to Mercury. She's coming through, and she is informing us. She is giving us inspiration and allowing us to be more active and progressive with dealing with this, that it's not just all about, let's just go to war, let's just fight about this. She will. She's not afraid to fight. She will pick up her spear and walk right into the middle of the battle. But before she gets there, she's going to try and negotiate some peace. And so that's what she's doing. She's circulating with these outer patriarchs, and she's informing them. And this is all going to carry forward. We're seeing an enormous seed moment that's developing in January of next year, next month, as all these planets conjoin, and then it will all be sealed off in December as Jupiter finally meets up with Pluto and Saturn, and seals the deal, closes the deal, and then we're looking at this long 12-year, 20-year, 500-year cycle again beginning to unfold. We're standing in a liminal space that is potentiated probably more enormously than any time frame that we've passed through it, perhaps in many of our lifetimes. And I don't mean karmically. I'm talking about individually. So it's a very powerful time. There's no question about it. And then Mars is going to come through, and he's going to pick up all the pieces and carry them around and distribute them. There's a huge dissemination that's happening here, and it's just a tremendous restructuring of everything that we've taken for granted. So this is my hope right here, because Pallas has her living surrogates right here on Earth, and we already know some of them. All of these women have prominent Pallas Athena placements in their chart. RBG, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, Associate Justice of the Supreme Court, Amy Goodman, investigative journalist, Ilhan Omar and Rashida Tlaib, who were the first Muslim women in Congress, Deb Allen, who actually is here in my home state, and Sharice Davids, first Native American woman of Congress, and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who is not only had a star, a celestial object named for her when she was in high school, but is one of the rising stars, in Washington, and someone who I have great faith in and hope. So where's this all going? It's my personal stance that I don't think that astrology is best served as a predictive science, because we're dealing with human consciousness, hopefully. And so the choices, what's going to happen tomorrow is going to be determined by the choices that we make today. What we are experiencing, the cataclysms and the crises and the events that we are suffering at the moment, are the result of the choices that were made in the past. All of these heavy outer planets are just sucking debris out of the south node. It's like when you take your vacuum cleaner and you reverse it and you let everything come out the back end. This is what we're getting, not just here in this country, but in the world. But it's a good thing if we can look at it and understand that this is our shadow, which is showing up. Symptoms are an attempt to heal. And without those symptoms, we don't know we're sick. We don't know anything is wrong. And clearly, there are many, many issues, from the earth to human consciousness to, the list. I don't even have to go through it, of things that need healing. These, in the past, these long-term consequences have done that kind of work. We have seen dramatic leaps and changes. New technology, new awareness, new consciousness has happened with every single visitation, but it has also brought strife and discord. It has brought to the fore the conflicts and the polarities and the unresolved tensions and issues and crises in our cultures and in our personalities individually and collectively that have been ignored, that have been buried, that have been denied, that have been fragmented off. We're experiencing a global Gaia soul loss to someone, and Gaia is not sick. We're sick. Gaia, I have great faith in the earth as well. I personally believe that all of us can heal ourselves given the right environment, given the right medicine, which I believe is food and good air and water. But the body can heal itself at any age, and I believe that the earth is the greatest healer of them all. She will heal herself if we can just back off and let her do it. And it is what she's doing. From my understanding, I think that that's what these storms are, and all this volcanic activity. The earth is just saying, "Hey, this is what I need to do to recover," and isn't really worried about how much human life survives one way or the other, because it's got a much broader perspective of all of this than we do. But as we learn, this is a real Virgo experience. We learn through direct emotional experience, Pluto and Virgo, where we recognize that we need to work on ourselves. If we're going to live together on this planet and we're all going to get along, we have to learn to live together. We have to live together as equals and peacefully. We have to understand that there is natural law that has been around for as long as we've been on the planet, and we've been here longer than we know. So it's time. The time has come. This is what all of the mystics, the religious teachers, the wise men, the shamans, the visionaries have told us through the ages. Every saint who has walked on this planet, and we know that it's roughly 5% of us, and even less than that, we can count them on one hand, the consciousness that's upheld the planet. They've all spoke the same message. The only difference was the time in which it was given and the mentality, the consciousness at which it was directed, but it was always the same message. And here, much more in my ebook. It's also a paperback. It's very comprehensive, very affordable. It's really a good read. I really enjoyed writing it. I think you will enjoy reading it. So I'm gonna open the floor to questions or comments. Anybody has anything to say?
Daniel, when is the first exact square from ERIS to, did you say Pluto or the nodes?
The first square will be, there's only one square to Saturn, and that's in January the 20th.
Yep.
Okay, it's a week after the Saturn-Pluto conjunction.
Uh-huh.
Okay, and 2 weeks after the eclipse, and then it will. I don't have all the dates in my head. And then Pluto is 3 times because Pluto is going to retrograde. I can pull up the charts if you'd like to see them.
Did you actually show them before?
I had one chart there, but it was a bi-wheel for the. It was a bi-wheel for the
Okay.
the U.S. chart. Oh, I had it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this is the first pass on January 26th.
And that is squaring Pluto or the nodes?
Yeah, this is Pluto.
Did you do the nodes?
No, this is to the Saturn-Pluto conjunction.
Uh-huh. Okay. So we're not you're not really looking at ERIS square the nodes, are you, in this?
No, we're looking at 23 degree ERIS to 23 degree Pluto Saturn Pluto.
Okay. So ERIS squared the nodes must have happened sometime this year.
Yes, we can certainly look at that date, but the nodes are already at the very beginning of Capricorn, and Eris is the 23 degrees. So yeah, she squared the early in the lunar transit, lunar no transit.
Yeah, got it. All right, thank you. Any more questions? Yep, there's a question from Sarah. Sarah, would you like to unmute and ask your question?
Sure, thank you, Linda.
Okay.
So I would just have a quick question, hopefully it's quick, about how to work with my ERIS placement. It feels really important, but I really don't know how to see it positively, if at all. My natal ERIS is at 15 degrees, conjunct Ceres at 17 degrees, in Aries in the 3rd house.
Well, yeah, okay. I don't know that I can tell you what Eris is all by itself without, really digesting the chart. But your 3rd house is about your voice. And it's either going to be an issue of generally with Eris of too much or too little. Eris generally errs on the side of too much. Tell me again what's in your 3rd house. It's conjunct, I'm sorry, say that again.
It's conjunct Ceres.
Yeah, Ceres.
Series, yeah.
And and what's on the cusp of your 3rd house?
It's Aries.
It is Aries. Okay,
yeah.
so I mean, there's a lot of things that this can be about. Ceres is in EA, from my perspective, represents our deepest personal loss. If it refers back to Demeter and Persephone and the loss of her only child, who was her, it was the most important thing in her life, and the anguish and the grief that she suffered as a result. But it's also the Persephone side of the story, and there's even some indications that Persephone didn't go kicking and screaming, because when she got there, she seemed to be quite happy with it. So and she really enjoyed her role as the queen of the underworld. So there's all ways to look at this. But generally, Ceres is a mother-daughter or parent-child issue or relationship kind of thing. And with Ceres there, with Eris there, the suggestion I get is that somebody has been discordant, some strifeful. There's been some tension, some conflict. Does that make any sense to you?
Definitely.
Yeah,
there's some tension. There's some communication issues.
Yeah,
definitely.
It's verbal. Yeah. Uh-huh.
Okay, yeah, I was just trying to see the positive element in that, or just the positive way to work with that archetype, I guess.
Well, the positive way to approach it is to recognize that there's a conflict and to see where the source of tension, where the toxicity is, And rather than reject it or repulse it or, try and fragment it off again, accept it, or at least open up the, try and open a conversation about it, or, even if you can't directly be in dialogue with whoever it is, you can within yourself in a meditative space, or go for a walk in nature, or in some way, or journaling, you can communicate how you feel, how you would like that to be. When we're in conflict with somebody, when somebody is seeing our negative core image, the way to heal that is to not see their negative core image, is to see them the way that we would like them to see us. And even if you can't communicate that to them, you can do it psychically. You know what I'm saying?
Definitely.
And yeah, just put yourself in that space, and it'll be in the Akasha, and ultimately they'll get it. Maybe not this lifetime, but ultimately, at least you're going in the right direction.
Okay, thank you, Daniel.
You're welcome.
Daniel, what about Libra, which is opposite Aries? How do we use Libra to help solve the problems of ERIS in Aries?
I think the Libra is pretty easy, because the inequalities that we're dealing with, whether gender inequalities, ageism, all of the things that are going on, we need to find some equilibrium. We need to find some commonality to recognize. I have a friend who likes to say there's only one of us on the planet. And I know that that's a reach, for a lot of us, but the misogyny, the xenophobia, the anger, the hatred, the racism that's just racing around the globe at the moment is at a level that I don't think anybody has ever experienced in recent history. And I think this is where we have to kind of come to terms with this somehow and find a way to heal it, because it's total polarity. And it's possible, Linda, that it's going to take more crises to do it, that maybe will be generated when Pluto moves into Aquarius, and we really begin to see that polarization manifest in ways that are working themselves out, even though they're working themselves out with conflict.
Yes, I think it's really important to acknowledge what is arising in terms of racism, and to work with it, and to realize that it will arise in very many people, and definitely don't ignore it, and work with it. So how do you suggest we deal with it?
I think, again, it begins with each of us. We can't change the world. We can only change ourselves. And if one person at a time comes to a place in themselves that's more proactively conscious as much as they can be, then the world will change. It's the 100th monkey principle, as far as I'm concerned. We have to. We're going to keep having these events. 9/11 is the perfect example. I grew up in the New York area. I wasn't living there, at the time in 2001, but when it happened, it was a very personal thing. And what really took me about that entire event was not the terrorism and not the Patriot Act that resulted in all the things that we've had to suffer. It was the fact that that single event brought together the 5 boroughs of Manhattan and the 3 states of New York, New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut as a single community. It didn't matter if you were black or white. Everybody dropped whatever they're doing and they went to help. Everybody, somehow pitched in, or was there emotionally, or was there physically. And these are the kind of events we're going to continue to happen until everybody gets it, that we're all in this together. What happens in Australia affects what happens in the States, affects what happens in England, what happens in Russia. Globalism is going to take on a whole different meaning and a whole different face, but we have a ways to go.
Yeah, that makes sense. With the Saturn-Pluto conjunction in January, and past Saturn-Pluto conjunctions have ushered in world wars. Right. So very important to be aware of what's going on.
So has Uranus in Gemini. Uranus in Gemini was the American Revolution, the Civil War, and World War II.
Right, and when does Uranus go into Gemini? Probably in about, 4 or 5, 6 years?
In about 7 years, 6, 7 years.
7 years, uh-huh. Good to know. Okay, Daniel. So do we have any more questions from our audiences? Facebook and Zoom. Okay, it looks like that's the end of your meeting, Daniel. Thank you so much. Fascinating meeting, and we'll see you at the astrological overview for your more on ERIS.
Yes. Okay.
Oh, yes, go ahead.
Thank you all very much for being here. It's my pleasure.
Okay, I'm going to unmute everybody. If you could all please thank Daniel Fiverson, everybody. Let's have a look at your graphic for the book. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you, Daniel.
Thank you, Daniel.
So, thank you all for coming.
Thank you, Daniel.